A man stood in front of me with his hands in his pockets. This was Sra's grandson, whom she had never met before, with his sharp short haircut, prominent nose, and tall, imposing stature. He gave off a rather intimidating vibe. I took a step back and wiped the sweat from my brow. I hear you want to give me a lesson. The man glanced at me indifferently. I managed a forced smile. You're a boxer. I wouldn't dare. He raised an eyebrow and lifted the bag he was holding. What's there to be afraid of? Even boxers need to add calcium milk. On the weekend, my best friend's call woke me up. I squinted, shielding my eyes from the sunlight streaming through the curtains. Still groggy from sleep, I mumbled, "What's the emergency?" The voice on the other end, sounding somewhat lazy and amused, replied, "Is this the dream of a billion handsome men?" I sat up abruptly. Why was my friend using that nickname for me? I instinctively asked. "May I ask who this is?" "You don't know me," the man said, pausing briefly. I heard the flick of a lighter on the other end. "Your friend seems to be drunk, and is currently clinging to my friend's leg in the street, yelling that he's a jerk. There's quite a crowd now, and your friend is still shouting. Do you want to come?" How embarrassing. My friend really knows how to make a scene. I quickly apologized. "Sorry, sir. Please keep an eye on her. I'll be there right away. She's not usually like this. She must still be drunk." The man chuckled lightly. "Take your time. Have some breakfast first?" I certainly couldn't eat breakfast. My friend was out there making a fuss. I didn't expect her to break up so quickly and resort to drinking away her sorrows. So, I hurriedly threw on a black coat over my cartoon pajamas and dashed out on my scooter. After parking the scooter, I quickly walked towards the entrance of the apartment complex. There was no sign of the large crowd I had anticipated. Maybe I was too focused on finding my friend to notice the handsome guy beside me. But as I passed by a tall man, a large hand grabbed my wrist. Startled, I looked up to meet a pair of dark eyes. I instinctively zipped up my coat to cover my cartoon pajamas. The man's gaze shifted slightly, and, perhaps it was my imagination, but his expression seemed to soften a bit. I glanced at him, feeling a pang of regret. I should have put on some makeup before coming out. How could I encounter such a striking man? The man's hands were well defined and strong. He held me with one hand and kept the other casually in his pocket. With a slight lift of his eyebrows and a barely perceptible smile, he said, "The dream of a billion handsome men." It was the same voice as on the phone. My friend's nickname for me once again made me cringe. I braced myself and replied, "It's me." The man chuckled softly, pulling at my sleeve. "Your friend has moved to the big trash bin up ahead, still crying." My heart skipped a beat. His hand was cool, and as he pulled at my sleeve, the back of his hand brushed against my skin, making me feel a bit ticklish. The man led me to a large trash bin, and just as I was about to wonder if he might be a kidnapper, I heard my friends shouting, "Scumbag, how dare you dump me first? You can't run away now. What do you think you are? When I went out, you were nothing." Behind the trash bin, my friend was clinging to a handsome young man, crying and shouting. The young man, who had a strikingly handsome face, looked furious, but he was gently holding my friend's head to prevent her from hitting the wall behind her. I quickly pried my friend away. She resisted. "Who are you? Don't push me away. No one can stop me from clinging to his leg today." "It's me, your father. Let go of him. You're making the poor guy lose face." My friend recognized me and pouted. "Nicole, you're finally here. This jerk is so awful." I hugged my friend and apologized to the young man. "I'm so sorry." "Really, I am." The young man, still looking serious, removed his coat and handed it to me. "Her dress is dirty." I took it, still stunned. "Thank you." Without another word, the young man walked away. I awkwardly glanced at the man who had brought me here. "I'm really sorry for the trouble today." "Thank you so much. I really appreciate it." The man leaned against the wall, casually playing with a metal lighter. He lit a cigarette with a nonchalant tone. "No big deal. I'm leaving. See you next time." At that moment, my mind was entirely on my friend, and I didn't notice the man had mentioned meeting again next time. I'm an intern at a famous medical clinic, and here, I'm like a little princess. I'm a medical student specializing in traditional Chinese medicine. I have an exceptionally kind teacher, Sarah. She's always calling me, little darling, or, little baby, which makes me really like her. Her cabinet is always stocked with snacks for me. She really treats me like a child. But I'm already 23, an age where kids at the hospital call me Auntie. Sarah told me her little grandson was quite a handful, always getting into fights, which worried her a lot. At the time, I comforted Sarah, saying, kids are just rebellious. A few beatings will make them understand. But if I had known he was a 185 centimeters tall professional boxer, I never would have said that. Sra's grandson is named Jeff. From Sra's description, I imagined him as a typical rebellious teenager with a bad temper, always getting into fights, making Sarah anxious. Kids shouldn't be indulged. I patted Sra's hand and said, don't worry, Sarah, I'm great at giving these younger guys a lecture. I'll come over this weekend to help you sort him out. Sra's eyes lit up. Great. You talk to him. You're so well behaved. He'll definitely listen to you. To get closer to the kid, I dressed in a youthful manner, looking like a high school student. But when I arrived at Sra's house, what I saw was a cabinet full of trophies and medals. Although I'm nearsighted, I could still make out the word boxing on them. I stood hesitantly at the door, unwilling to enter. Sarah. Sarah cheerfully called from the kitchen. What's up, little darling? I forced a smile. You mentioned Jeff is always getting into fights. You didn't mean boxing matches, did you? Yes, Nicole, you don't know. He comes home covered in bruises every time. Oh, he never listens. And I don't know where he got that temper from. I swallowed nervously. A bad temper and a boxer. And I thought I could lecture him. I was completely out of my depth. Sorry, I was presumptuous. I want to leave immediately. My hand was on the door handle, contemplating how to make a graceful exit. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Before I could react, I collided with Jeff as he walked in. He instinctively steadied me, preventing me from falling. The scent of his shower gel hit me. Surprisingly, he smelled really good. I thought to myself, I need the link for that shower gel. My hand unintentionally touched his abs through his clothes. I marveled at how well defined they were. His hands were strong and well defined, a testament to his career as a professional boxer. Suddenly, his deep voice came from above. Nicole, steady yourself. He knew my name, and his voice was so pleasant. Wait, why did it sound so familiar? I looked up slowly, and the familiar handsome face was the very man I had been thinking about for days. What a twisted fate. Haha, it's you. What a coincidence. Jeff looked at me with a half smile. Quite a coincidence. Maybe it's a professional thing. But the man who seemed heavenly handsome now looked quite intimidating. Was he really going to punch me away? I carefully stepped back and wiped the sweat from my brow. Jeff glanced at me casually. I hear you want to give me a lesson. I looked up awkwardly. You're a boxer. I wouldn't dare. Jeff seemed to smile and handed me the bag he was holding. What's there to be afraid of? Even boxers need to buy ad calcium. At dinner, I felt incredibly uneasy, unable to escape but also not wanting to stay. Jeff naturally sat next to me. With such a tall man at such a small table, it must have been quite uncomfortable for him. His long legs barely fit, but he didn't mind at all. After carefully inserting the straw into the ad calcium milk, he handed it to me and propped his chin on his hand. Watching me, I could feel Jeff's gaze on me, and Sarah looked at us both with satisfaction. I could hardly drink the ad calcium milk. I seriously suspected that Sarah had tricked me into a trap. I gripped the bottle tightly, trying to come up with an excuse to escape this awkward situation. Suddenly, Jeff smiled lightly and said lazily, "Don't be nervous, just be yourself. After all, this isn't our first meeting, right?" I forced a smile and whispered, "What's not right?" That day, Jeff drove me home. I said it wasn't necessary, but Jeff, with one hand in his pocket and the other gripping the back of my neck, pulled me forward. "It's only right to give you a ride. What are you thinking?" That night, I received a friend request from Jeff on my phone. I glanced at it and then tossed my phone aside, pretending I hadn't seen it. Even though he was handsome, his intimidating aura made me reluctant to get involved with him. But how did he know I liked ad calcium milk? Was it a coincidence? I thought that by not accepting the friend request, I wouldn't have any more interactions with Jeff, considering athletes are so busy with training. But my bold best friend got into a scuffle with some drunks at a bar. I asked her on the phone, "Why are you so impulsive? crying. She said, "They were trying to take advantage of me. Damn, beat them up, I'm coming." I immediately put on my clothes and headed to the bar. When I arrived, I saw my friend arguing with the drunks. A man was raising his hand, ready to hit my friend. I rolled up my sleeves and charged in. I was too fast. I only had time to shield my friend's head, but instead of a slap, a beautiful hand grabbed the drunk's hand. A cold voice came from above, "Looking for trouble?" I looked up to see Jeff's indifferent gaze. I happily called out, "Jeff," and laughed without a care, thinking, how great, he's a boxer, he can handle this. Jeff, seeing my admiring look, was momentarily stunned and awkwardly turned away. I immediately let go of my friend and tugged at Jeff's sleeve. He bent down to listen as I, with some bravado, pointed at the drunks. "Jeff, these drunks are trying to take advantage of us. You should go and deal with them." Before I could finish, Jeff grabbed me by the collar and pulled me back behind him. "Don't get caught up in their alcohol." Seeing Jeff dismiss the drunks so casually, their expressions nearly lost control. "You think you can meddle?" Jeff smiled slightly, but his eyes grew colder. "Let's see." I watched him with bright eyes. "Are you really going to fight?" Jeff looked at me and chuckled. "You're so eager." I nodded and then remembered something crucial. "Wait, you're a boxer. Is it okay to fight like this outside?" Jeff looked at me and adjusted my messy collar. "Actually, whether you're a boxer or not, fighting is illegal." "Oh my. Did you really need to point that out?" I drooped my head. "So what should we do?" Jeff nodded toward a guy who was covering my friend with a coat. "No worries, there's still him." I followed his gaze and recognized the young man who had been clung to by my drunk friend. I asked quietly, "Isn't it illegal for him too? Does he have connections?" Jeff pulled me along. "It's fine, he's not afraid. He's good at fighting, so let him handle it." I remembered my friend and said, "My friend, I need to take her with me." Jeff led me outside. "Don't worry, with that guy around, even if he gets into trouble, your friend will be fine." I looked back uneasily. Sure enough, the handsome young man had placed my friend in a safe spot and was talking to her. When she nodded, he picked up a chair and threw it at the drunks. The scene immediately turned chaotic. I was amazed. "He's really something." Jeff turned my head away. "Nicole, watch where you're going." Jeff's hands, callous from boxing, made me feel a tickle as they brushed my skin, which I forced myself to ignore. "Okay." Jeff dropped me off at home. As I was about to close the door, he stopped me. Our eyes met, and I was momentarily stunned by his gaze. Looking away, "Is there something else?" Jeff said casually. "Nicole, you haven't accepted my friend request." My smile froze on my face. It was so awkward to bring it up directly. Jeff scanned me casually. "It's okay, you probably just forgot to accept it, right?" I took out my phone. "Haha, you're right, it was late that day, and I really forgot." "I'll add you now." Only when I accepted the request and added a note did Jeff leave with a satisfied look. Watching him walk away, I could clearly sense his happiness. Was adding a Weshit friend really that exciting? Well, I thought, even if I accepted, we probably wouldn't talk much. But I didn't expect Jeff to become so present during my internship. A large bag of snacks was placed on Sra's desk. Jeff casually pulled up a stool and sat down, asking me in a natural tone, "Are you tired today?" Lately, I had gotten used to his presence. I picked out the food I liked, and, damn, I liked everything. "I'm not tired. There are fewer patients today than yesterday." "That's good," Jeff said, propping his chin on his hand, looking at me with a casual air. "He comes to visit Sarah almost every weekend, bringing a whole bunch of food, and coincidentally, every single item is something I particularly enjoy. He never eats any of it himself. He just watches me eat. I've even asked him, 'Aren't you going to eat?' Jeff casually replied, 'I like watching you eat.'" It was such an ordinary statement, but his voice was so pleasant that it made me blush. Every time I ate something, the smile in his eyes seemed to deepen, as if my eating the food he bought made him happy. I really didn't want to get used to his presence, but he took such good care of me. What's worse, he knew even my little habits inside out. It was amazing. He seemed to understand me better than I understood myself. So eventually, I began to look forward to his visits. How pathetic. The only downside was that he only came on weekends, so the number of patients on weekends was usually more than usual, and they were all young girls, clearly drawn to Jeff's face. However, when those girls tried to flirt with him, Jeff's face would turn so sour that they would get scared off. It was only when I tugged on his sleeve that he would reluctantly crack a smile. As Jeff and I became more familiar with each other, some things were easily exposed. That day, following the address Sarah gave me, I finally found Jeff's apartment. It was my first time here, and for some reason, I felt a bit nervous. I took several deep breaths before ringing the doorbell. After ringing it several times with no response, I wondered if Sarah had been so ill that she couldn't even get up. Was she really okay with me coming to check on him? I didn't dwell on it and inputted the password Sarah had provided and walked in. The apartment's curtains were drawn, so the place was quite dim, but the room was exceptionally clean and simply furnished, a clear sign it belonged to a guy. I looked around but didn't see Jeff. After some hesitation, I decided to head towards Jeff's bedroom. I really felt bad about this, but I had to check the bedroom. What if Jeff was really sick? I carefully pushed open the door. The bedroom was just as quiet. My gaze landed on a photo on the bedside table. It was a picture of a girl, smiling brightly. I was stunned, unable to believe my eyes. The person in the photo wasn't just anyone, it was me at 17 years old. This was the photo I lost at 17, and it was preserved so well. Had Jeff known me for a long time? Just as I reached to pick up the photo, a large hand came from above and flipped the frame over, hiding the back against the bedside table. I turned around in panic and looked up into Jeff's dark eyes. Did you see? Jeff's voice was low and hoarse, and he was only wrapped in a towel, so he had just been taking a shower. I responded quietly, yes, I saw. Jeff's upper body was bare, with a healthy tan. His physique was long and well built due to years of boxing. His muscles were tight and smooth. His hand was still resting on the bedside table, and I was caught between Jeff and the table, too close. With the scent of his body wash filling my nose, water droplets from his arm fell onto the back of my hand. My heart raced, and heat spread from my neck to my face. Jeff's lips were pressed together, and he stared at me intently. His dark eyes held many emotions I didn't understand: nervousness, stubbornness, confusion. My heart skipped a beat. Why was he looking at me like that? My gaze dropped, and I noticed the abnormal flush on Jeff's face. He was really sick. Instinctively, I reached out to check his forehead, and the heat made me want to pull my hand back. But just as it reached his cheek, Jeff grabbed it. The intense heat from his body spread through my hand, and my heart trembled again. You're sick. Jeff furrowed his brow tightly and muttered, "Let me explain." His voice trailed off. Jeff could no longer hold on. Slightly bending forward and burying his chin in my neck, I heard his last coherent words before he lost consciousness. He said, "I'm not a pervert. The photo wasn't stolen. It was found. Don't be mad." I helped Jeff onto the bed. He was really heavy, and with his 185 centimeters height, I practically dragged him up. I found some fever-reducing medicine and patches in his medicine cabinet. I was surprised to see it was so well prepared. Sarah must have arranged it. Otherwise, Jeff wouldn't have known to prepare for his own fever. Right. I used alcohol to wipe Jeff's palms, soles, and back. His body temperature noticeably decreased, and I applied the fever patches. Seeing the thermometer's normal reading, I sighed in relief. Perhaps because he was in good health, his fever subsided. I pulled up a small stool and sat by his bed, resting my chin on my hands as I looked at him. I had to admit, he was really good looking. Sleeping Jeff was much softer than usual, but even though he looked fierce normally, he was unexpectedly meticulous. My gaze fell back on the photo frame on the bedside table. Everything seemed to become clear. Why had Jeff been so familiar from the start? Why did he seem to know so many of my habits instinctively? Now I had all the answers. When I looked back, I met Jeff's calm gaze. He was awake and had been watching me for some time. I was momentarily stunned, but stood up and said, "It's good you're awake. I made kani for you in the kitchen. Remember to eat it." Just as I took a step away, Jeff called out to me, "Nicole." I replied, "Yes." His voice, still a bit muffled from just waking up, carried a nasal tone. "Are you angry? Or do you dislike me?" I smiled gently. By now, my mood had calmed down. "Jeff, do you like me?" Jeff looked nervous but tried to appear casual. "Yes, I've liked you for a long time. I turned around, speaking seriously. Thank you for your affection. But Jeff, I'm like you. People often cling to youthful crushes for a long time. Me too. I have someone I've liked for a long time, so I can't respond to your feelings with certainty. It wouldn't be fair to you. Rest well. You need to recover before you can train. I won't disturb you. Jeff's voice was very low, but he was trying to stay calm, which was unlike him. It's nothing. A small thing. Wait for me. I'll walk you out. As he spoke, he tried to get out of bed, but when he saw he was only in a towel, he pulled back. I couldn't help but laugh. It's fine. You should rest. You're the patient, so you should listen to the doctor. Jeff's eyes locked onto me, looking a bit dimmer. He suddenly smiled faintly. All right, send me a message when you get home. Otherwise, I'll worry. Okay. From that day on, my relationship with Jeff seemed to change. No, it was more like I was distancing myself unilaterally. Jeff still messaged me every weekend, but I rarely replied. He continued to visit Sarah as usual, bringing a big bag of food. He hadn't changed, but I was avoiding him. I had to admit, it was hard not to be moved by him, good looking, and knowing everything I cared about. But the person from my past memories was too perfect. I had secretly liked him for years, and it was a habit I couldn't give up. So I had to avoid Jeff. Giving hope to unrequited feelings would be impolite. Each time Jeff came, I hid in the bathroom in Sarah's office. I felt sure Jeff knew I was there because Sarah wouldn't lie. After Jeff placed the snacks down and looked around for me, he asked casually, Grandma, where's Nicole? Sarah, not knowing where to put her hands, and glancing nervously in my direction, replied, Little Nicole asked me to tell you she's not here. I was stunned. Hiding in the inner room, I thought Jeff would come in to confront me and ask why I was deliberately avoiding him, but he never did, not even once. He just responded with an placed the snacks down, and with a teasing tone said, All right, when she comes out later, make sure she eats everything she likes. Don't hide too long. Her nature might get frustrated. Hearing Jeff's teasing, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Oh, how unworthy I felt. But every time after that, I stayed hidden, and he never exposed me. It was as if he was playing along with my act, never stepping forward to disturb me. Even though Jeff came every week, I hadn't seen him for a long time, until one day, after placing the snacks, he didn't leave but called out to Sarah. Grandma. Sarah, who was picking out snacks, looked up in confusion. What's up? Jeff's tone was serious. I have a match coming up. Sarah snorted and didn't seem to care much. If you have a match, just go. It's not a big deal. You never told me these things before. Suddenly, Sarah stopped, seemingly remembering something, and realized, I get it now. I'm your grandma, so I should go watch your match. And at my age, I should have someone accompany me. Good point. Jeff put down a pack of Ad Calcium and headed for the door, his eyes seemingly curving into a smile. Let's go. Grandma, remember to come watch the match. Don't worry, I won't forget. Your grandma is clear on this. So for the next few days, Sarah kept persuading me to accompany her to the match, saying she was too old and needed someone to go with her, or the staff wouldn't let her in. While eating, Sarah lamented about how much she wanted to see Jeff's match as his grandmother. Nicole, come with me. I'm Jeff's grandma. I can't miss such an important match. I heard the opponent is a well-known figure from abroad, undefeated. As his grandma, I have to cheer him on. So, please come with me. While tearing open packaging for Sarah, I firmly refused. Sarah gave up in frustration, and I thought that would be the end of it. But the night before the match, I received a call from Jeff. Hello. Jeff didn't say anything on the other end. I could only hear his breathing. After a long pause, he spoke. Will you come to the match? I involuntarily dug my nails into my palm. No. Another silence. It sounded like wind on the line, and Jeff's voice was muffled. Why? I could tell he wasn't in a good mood, so I dug my nails into my palm even harder. His voice, faint and carried by the wind, reached my ears. Don't dig into your palm. I was stunned, my mind blank, and my spine shivered. Jeff knew everything. I held the phone in silence. After a while, Jeff sighed resignedly. Nicole, I responded. I'm here. Get some rest. Okay. After the call ended, I couldn't sleep all night. My refusal had been decisive, but on the day of the match, I arrived earlier than anyone else, carrying a huge amount of equipment, my excitement and cheering louder than anyone else. I had no choice. Everyone around me was a fan of the foreign opponent, so I had to outdo them in enthusiasm. Let's just say, on that day, my shouting pierced through the entire venue. The only regret was that the opponent had brought a drum and was beating it while cheering, but I didn't have a drum. My bag was too full. So, to drown out their drum, I shouted until my throat was hoarse. Before the match started, Jeff kept glancing at the audience. When he noticed my piercing cheers, his eyes lit up, and his smile widened instantly. The media's cameras clicked away. Jeff was known for his cold demeanor, rarely smiling. So when he did, everyone was surprised and snapped pictures frantically. A reporter handed a microphone to Jeff for an interview. Jeff, the opponent you're facing is a formidable one with an undefeated record. Many netizens predict you might lose today. Do you have anything to say about that? Jeff, smiling playfully at the camera, said, "Sorry, I get stronger when faced with tough opponents." Because of that sentence, the cheers from the audience reached a climax, and I stood there in a daze, unable to hear anything else. Stronger when faced with strength. Stronger when faced with strength. It's him. The person I met on the bus when I was 17 is him. The same tone, the same words. It really is him. The person I've liked for so many years, because of that sentence turns out to be Jeff. Heaven really knows how to make a twist. As the match started, I wiped away my tears while cheering for Jeff. It's so frustrating. Why did he have to wear a mask and a hat back then? Was he afraid people would remember him? It made me search for him like finding a needle in a haystack for so long. I was both complaining about him in my heart, and anxiously worried he might get beaten. Fortunately, Jeff lived up to expectations and won the match. He was embraced by his teammates and coach, and the whole venue cheered for him. Jeff, with a face full of injuries and a bruised body, walked up to me, smiling without a care. "Little Nicole, I didn't expect you to come. I'm really happy right now." My voice trembled slightly. "Jeff, do you remember? 6 years ago, you met a girl on the bus. She did poorly on her test that day, and you told her that being stronger when faced with strength is impressive." Seeing me cry, Jeff nervously wiped away my tears. "Of course I remember. That was when we first met." "Why are you crying?" My tears kept flowing uncontrollably. "Then why didn't you tell me?" Jeff scratched the back of his head. "I thought you wouldn't remember me." "Later on, we met so many times at school, and you never recognized me, so I didn't dare to approach you." I cried even louder. "Do you want to hear the nonsense you're saying? How could I remember you? I didn't even know what you looked like. You were wearing a mask and a hat that day. Am I supposed to have X-ray vision to see your face under the mask? Do you know how hard I searched for you, without even knowing what you looked like finding a needle in a haystack?" Jeff wiped my tears, completely unconcerned with the cameras and media around us. Gently, he pulled me into his embrace, patiently comforting me. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Please don't cry, okay?" During my barren student years, I wasn't pretty. To avoid disappointing my parents, my life seemed to consist only of exams and studying. The dormitory lights were earlier than sunrise, and the classroom lights were later than sunset. At that time, the evening glow was precious, and time was hurried. Yet, I never imagined that someone would like me so much. If time could go back to when I was 17, I would be more confident in the photos. Because, later I realized, there was never a moment when I was more hardworking than when I was 17. Look, the blue school uniform, the punctual class bell, the pile of test papers, none of them seemed ordinary, because this is our fiery soul and rare youth, just like a flower blooming against the wind in spring, and the person who sees the flower will always be moved countless times. What's the end of a secret crush? It's that I also like you, and I clumsily repeated this for several years. The end of the main story. Extra, Jeff's perspective ***. When Jeff first met Nicole, he was 17, the age of rebellion, looking down on everyone. At a school near Jing City, few people didn't know him, and Nicole was one of them. She was so well behaved, it seemed like her life only revolved around studying. Jeff had never seen someone like her or someone who could smile so beautifully. He remembered clearly where they first met, on the bus. That day, Nicole was holding her report card, ranking 25th in her grade, a very good result. But she seemed very dejected, sitting by the window with her head tilted. Her hands were very white, but her fingers were red and conspicuous because she had gripped her test papers too tightly. Jeff wasn't one to meddle in other people's business, but that day, he got on the bus by chance and sat behind her, listening to her sighs. Jeff didn't usually initiate conversations because people were somewhat afraid of him, but hearing Nicole's repeated sighs, he suddenly wanted to smooth her furrowed brow. Before he realized it, he had already asked, "Why are you sighing?" Nicole was taken aback, seemingly surprised that a stranger would ask her this. She politely replied, "Because I didn't do well on the test." "Didn't you rank 25th? That's very good." The young girl seemed to have found someone to confide in. She slightly turned her body and looked at Jeff with hopeful eyes. "But I'm in an advanced class. Everyone is very capable, and I only ranked 19th in the class. My parents are teachers, and have very high expectations of me. They will be disappointed. I'm not smart, so I have to work twice as hard, but it seems I still haven't met their expectations." Jeff looked at the girl's pitiful eyes, and his heart trembled uncontrollably several times. He didn't even catch what she was saying, only able to comfort her with his own experience of the day. "I participated in the provincial youth boxing competition today. It was my first time qualifying for a competition." Nicole asked instinctively, "Did you win?" "I didn't even get a decent ranking," Jeff said calmly. "Before I went, I thought I wouldn't encounter anyone stronger than me, but everyone turned out to be so strong." Nicole looked at him with empathy. "So, you must be very sad." Jeff leaned back slightly, adopting a relaxed posture against the seat. "What's the big deal? Next time I won't lose." Being stronger when faced with strength is impressive. The young girl looked encouraged and enlightened. The bus announcement was calling out the stop, and she suddenly stood up. "Oh, I've arrived." She raised her hand, which was at the height of Jeff's head, and Jeff instinctively raised his hand as well. Clap. They high-fived in mid-air. "Thank you, classmate. I was encouraged today. You'll definitely win the next competition." Jeff unconsciously smiled. It was strange. He was quite irritated from losing the competition today. He stood up and got off the bus at the next stop, because he had already been on for several stops. After that encounter, Jeff often ran into Nicole, but it seemed she only saw him as an ordinary passerby, and couldn't even remember him. The usually arrogant Jeff didn't dare to approach her. Jeff clearly remembered the last time he saw Nicole, which was a week before the college entrance exams. Their class was taking graduation photos. That day, she seemed to have put on light makeup, with her hair in a bun down, wearing a white shirt and a black skirt. She was charming and wild that day, with stars in her eyes. Jeff had just finished playing basketball, wearing his number 1 jersey, and walked past her face to face. In fact, even from a distance, Jeff had already noticed her figure. Their classroom wasn't in that area. It was his own feet that changed direction. Walking this way allowed him to pass by Nicole face to face. His little followers behind him were puzzled but didn't dare to ask. They thought that Jeff must have had his reasons for taking the wrong path. Nicole was flipping through a pile of photos, discussing which one was the best with those around her. As they passed by, Jeff had his hands in his pockets, his heart racing fast. Nicole stepped on a pebble and almost fell. Acting faster than his brain, Jeff caught Nicole around the waist. "Soft," was the first thought that came to Jeff's mind. Nicole didn't look at him and, blushing, pulled away. "Thank you." Jeff glanced at her, with a neutral expression, and said, "No problem. Just watch where you're going next time." Nicole nodded, blushing, and hurried away with her classmates. The photo she accidentally dropped was carefully picked up by Jeff. Looking at the photo, Jeff saw that it was a single shot of Nicole standing under a big tree, sunlight filtering through the leaves onto her eyelashes. Smiling with her eyes squinted at the camera, Jeff traced the photo with his fingers, staring at it for a long time, before silently tucking it into his pocket. Jeff thought, what he found is now his. Extra, Sarah's perspective Teacher Sarah, the interns for this session will arrive in a few days. I heard there are a few promising ones. Would you like to take one under your wing? Sarah is a retired traditional Chinese medicine doctor, who was rehired after retirement. renowned for her excellent skills. Although Drive Jong is the chief, he is quite respectful in front of Sarah. At the moment, Sarah was carefully eating chicken wings, afraid of breaking a tooth, and waved her hand at Dr. John. Take one. No, I can't handle children. Let Xiao Yang and the others take them. Dr. John knew Sarah's resolute personality. Besides her patience, he had never seen her show any warmth to anyone. Even leaders received the same treatment. So, Dr. John didn't dare to persuade her. All right, I'll tell old Yang and the others. Take your time eating. I'm leaving now. Sarah didn't think much of it, but when the interns arrived, she went to take a look out of curiosity. When she saw them, Sarah's gaze fixated on one girl. She had a bun hairstyle, was petite, with very fair skin, and carried a red backpack. She looked very well behaved. When someone next to her said something, the girl covered her mouth and smiled with her eyes squinted. Perhaps Sarah's gaze was too intense. The girl suddenly looked over. Sarah instinctively hid behind a pillar and continued to peek. She looks so much like her. So much like her. How can she look so similar? When Drive Jong arrived, he saw Sarah hiding behind the pillar muttering to herself. He hesitated but eventually tapped Sarah on the shoulder, as she wasn't very well concealed, and several interns had already seen her. Teacher Sarah, Teacher Sarah. After several taps, Sarah finally turned around and, looking mysteriously, asked, Xiao Zhang, what's the name of that girl with the red backpack, who looks so well behaved? Dr. Zhang followed her direction and replied, her name is Nicole. She has the best overall performance among the interns this time, and is from the Chinese medicine department, which matches her specialty. Before Drive Zhang could finish, Sarah grabbed his hand, her eyes shining with unprecedented excitement. Her name is Nicole. Who's mentoring her during the internship? How about me? I have a good temper and like these kids. Dr. Zhang had never seen Sarah so excited and was startled. Nodding repeatedly, if you're happy, that's good. Sarah became Nicole's mentor. On her way home, she felt a bit proud and went straight to her grandson's apartment, pushing open the door and walking directly into Jeff's bedroom. Sarah's gaze fell on a photo placed on the bedside. The girl in the photo looked exactly like the face she saw today. Unable to contain herself, Sarah laughed with satisfaction. Jeff, used to his grandmother's eccentric behavior, didn't pay much attention. He put on his clothes and planned to go for a run. Just as he reached the door, Sarah called out to him, Jeff. Jeff stopped, turned around to look at Sarah, and said nothing, not urging her either. Sarah leisurely sat on the sofa, crossed her legs. Guess what the name of the intern I'm mentoring this time is? Jeff wasn't interested and frowned, continuing to head toward the door. Sarah continued, her name is Nicole. She's a very well-behaved girl. Jeff abruptly stopped. The motion sensor lights in the hallway flickered, and his face was cast in shadows. Sweat trickled down his forehead. He stood for a long time, finally regaining his composure, and walked straight to the kitchen, poured a cup of tea, and handed it to Sarah. On closer inspection, Jeff's hands, which had never shaken during boxing, trembled slightly as he held the small cup of tea. The mischievous Jeff now had a serious look in his eyes. His voice was deep and hoarse. Grandma, please help me. The main story is complete. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for the latest content, with a new novel update every day.